Now with chords we have the major one and the minor one. And I'm showing you these on C, but this applies to any other key. You could have A major or A minor, but we'll just work in C for the moment. Now, those two chord types, they're fine on their own. You know, you can play a sort of, if I was to play a ballad sort of style thing with C major, I could do something like this. And that's fine. And then that leaves the vocal line quite a lot of room because you're static with that harmony. However, you may want to sort of create something that's just got a little bit extra interest in that harmony. Now, with major chords, you can add, and minor chords, with a major chord, you can add what's known as the supertonic, which is the second note of your scale in the chord that you're on. So in a C major chord and a C major scale, they are, they're related. You've got the scale and then the chord that goes with that, the major chord. The major scale obviously has more notes than the chord. In fact, it has 7 different notes. The supertonic is the second note. So in this case, the D. So what about if I was to do this? It's just got something a little bit extra. You can also do that with the 6th or the submediant. So I could have the A there, or the A down here. Don't forget an A, an A, an A, they're all the same. They're all the same note, remember that. There's no difference between those two A's in terms of the harmony that you're generating. It just gives it a slightly different sound. So, also, with the C chord here, I had a C major chord, which is C, E and G, but I also had a C in the left hand in the bass, just to give it a bit of depth, a bit of body. I could even go down an octave from there to create something a little bit more powerful. Perhaps in the chorus you could start using lower notes. However, I don't need both of those notes. I just don't need them at all. How about if I took this C away and just ended up with the E and the G in my chord? There's not much difference between this and this. I suppose the one with the 3 notes sounds a little fuller, but it's not actually doing a huge amount putting it there because you've got it here. So that means that you could move that note elsewhere, perhaps the second note, the supertonic that we were just looking at just now. You could create movement between the supertonic and the tonic, which is the first note. You're not actually really changing the chord. It's still C major, but you've just spiced it up with something. Now, using the submediant, which is the 6th, I could do something like this for C. Notice I've taken the G away. Now, the fundamental interval in music is the perfect 5th. Here it is, the distance between that note and the tonic. So I've got this. But the harmonic series dictates that this note contains the perfect 5th up here, the perfect 12th. Remembering that this G and this G are the same note, it means you can also get rid of that one. So you can have your C and an E. That's a C chord, really, because you've got the G there as the harmonic of this one, which means you can add other stuff. There's the submediant or the 6th, and then the supertonic or the 2nd. You may want to add the 5th just to keep the chord footing. Especially if you're adding other stuff, it can become a little bit unclear sometimes. So you could include the 5th in your chord, or you could include it in a sort of, a constant 8-note rhythm. So something like this. Notice that I'm putting the fifth in the left hand. I'm giving the left hand something to do to divide the work up. Now, you can use one more note as well, which is the leading note, or the seventh. But you've got to be a bit careful with this, because if the vocalist is singing the main note, the tonic, you can create a few problems with that. So maybe it's a sparing thing. Now, I just hit that note, which is the note you can't use. It's the fourth, or the subdominant. Now, the problem with that is that it is right next to the note that is really giving that chord its quality. It's giving that chord its identity. Now, in jazz, you can sharpen it, but we're kind of staying away from that at the moment. This is basically a C major chord and how to spice it up. That could be your intro, and then when you come in with a verse you could simplify things a bit. Back to the intro. That sort of thing. Now, that's the major chord. What about the minor one? You've actually got a bit more freedom here in that you can use one extra note, which gives you more possibilities. C minor is the dark sort of sounding chord. Now you can still add your supertonic, your subdominant, your submediant, and then the flattened leading note. So I'm going to start adding stuff. C minor. Let's take away that C, because we've got it in the left hand. And let's add the supertonic. It gives us that dissonance, but it's still minor. What about the subdominant, the fourth, the F? Now that could be all a little bit close, but the answer is, because I said just now, that D and that D are the same, or that D, or whatever, you could spread the notes out a bit if it's a bit close to close harmony. So I could go like something like this, where I put the supertonic at the top. So I've got my C minor chord, and then I've got this up the top there. So, and then I've got my flattened leading note, which is the B flat in C minor. Subdominant. I could also use the sixth, but that's quite powerful in a minor chord. But you could do that. You can, and then of course you can sort of spread out riffs or sort of create something that's sort of chord based. Something like that. Now, it depends though. If you've got a tune playing, like a violin solo, you don't want the piano to be too... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record, this is the Disc Clavier by Yamaha, which allows me to record a performance on an acoustic piano. So I'm just going to play a C minor sort of thing like that, and then play a violin over the top, see how that works. back. This time I'm going to pick my violin up and see if the tune that I'm going to play on the violin really sort of goes with that piano part, because it could be that the piano is too complicated. Okay. Yeah, maybe I could simplify it a bit, because I actually had to play the violin quite loudly there and to do a bit more to sort of compete with what was going on here. So maybe I'll try something else, something like this. So something like that. There was space there, rhythmic space, rather than just filling it up. So something like that would. So, one other thing you can do when you are writing a song, when you're doing production like this, is that you could put the specific extra things in the strings. So if I play a C minor chord, I could maybe add those two notes or something. So I could do something like this. If I just play the basic C minor, so I just created a rhythm. There was some sort of tempo, sort of identity there, but I was just playing C minor, like that. So the notes that I could use the F, which is the subdominant, and the flat and leading notes. I could play those on the violin. So imagine I'm playing string parts now. So there, basically what I've done is simply to play the C minor and then generate those extra flavours using other instruments, which could be a good way of keeping them different in the mix as well, because you don't want... Well, somebody's trying to sing, "Oh, you left me," and he's thinking, "Shut up!" So it could be that those sort of close harmonies could sort of end up getting in the way. And then you're into sort of the jazz sort of terminal. That's a bit different. That's kind of a piece of solo piano music. Whereas if you've got somebody singing over the top, "Oh, baby, you left me without hope. Oh, I can make up lyrics on the spot very easily." Much sparser in the piano. So I hope that's given you a few extra things to work with. It just it's such a nice thing to be able to just put in those things and make them really subtle.